And now Jared Goff being traded there with them trading away Matthew Stafford. So my question to you is, and to Whisper Nation too, if you want to leave a comment below on what you think DeAndre Swift's outcome and outlook is with now Jared Goff and Dan Campbell.
Right here.
Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel so you can get all that and get those notifications today. Johnny, that leads us to the show here, my man. And so why don't you kick us off with a little question of the day?
All right. I think that, being the TFW's way, and, I got to go with one of my, and it's let's just be real. We talk real on this podcast. It's probably going to be my bromance at the running back position this year. I'll just say it now. But that is running back DeAndre Swift. He was one of my bromances last year as the rookie position. But looking at a big breakout year, potentially in his second year. Now they've had some big information come out obviously over the last couple of weeks because of Dan Campbell getting hired. We talked about that on a previous podcast. And now Jared Goff being traded there with them trading away Matthew Stafford. So my question to you is, and to Whisper Nation too, if you want to leave a comment below on what you think DeAndre Swift's outcome and outlook is with now Jared Goff and Dan Campbell.
Yeah, it's an interesting kind of deep dive that we ended up doing here because obviously, not to cheat Whisper Nation, but we came up with this question before recording, and I had to dive into it a little bit because there's a couple things swirling around. It's not just Dan Campbell that comes in, who has spent time with Sean Payton in New Orleans, spent time under Bill Parcells, had a brief stint as an interim head coach in Miami. You've got Anthony Lynn, who was recently fired from the Los Angeles Chargers, now hired as the offensive coordinator there. And on top of Dan Campbell, you've got Jared Goff, a whole new quarterback coming in for DeAndre Swift. So new system, new coaches, new quarterback. It's a kind of a swirling take here. So what I did is, if you can follow me on Twitter at BigTravyTFW, I put a little chart together just to kind of display some of the things we're dealing with. I wanted to compare DeAndre Swift to Todd Gurley, Alvin Kamara, Melvin Gordon, Austin Eckler. And what do these guys have to do with each other? Well, Todd Gurley spent two of his best years with Jared Goff, who now will be throwing balls to Detroit Lions receivers, including DeAndre Swift. You've got Alvin Kamara, who's a guy we should look at his production as well, because Dan Campbell's been the assistant head coach in New Orleans for 4 years. So if there's a model of how to use a running back, Dan Campbell's seen it from Sean Payton and Alvin Kamara, especially a dynamic running back. Then you've got Melvin Gordon and Austin Eckler, both different types of running backs, but spent 3 years with Anthony Lynn as their head coach. And so what I kind of broke this down is, Johnny, all these guys were above 5.3 targets per game and just about the 4 reception mark. Now, obviously, the outlier here is Alvin Kamara. He had 6.8 targets per game, 5.4 catches per game. DeAndre Swift last year, decent as a rookie, 4 targets per game, 3.5 catches per game. So the catch rate's high. He should be used more in the passing game. And so for me, we've talked at length. Yes, you want to be a good rusher in fantasy. Derrick Henry doesn't get any pass catching ability, but he still dominates. But that's few and far between. You want to be used in the passing game. It's far more valuable as a running back to be targeted and to get catches that way. And so that just leads me to believe that DeAndre Swift's outlook is looking really good with all these minds around him. And the fact that Todd Gurley had some great reception years with Jared Goff when he was in his prime before the knee was really, really acting up. So for me, I really like Swift's outlook, regardless of quarterback or what else they do. And then if you think, Johnny, you got Kenny Golladay as a free agent here. If Kenny Golladay leaves and Swift, they have to get a rookie to, replace him. Swift could be used even more in the passing game, just as an outlet for this offense. So really excited about Swift's outlook with these new additions.
Yeah, well, a couple points that I want to touch on specifically that you brought up that I thought were really interesting. You talked about Dan Campbell and that press conference, right? Like in that press conference, he basically gushed about DeAndre Swift and getting him the ball like a lot. Like that's going to be their main focal point moving forward. And then you also touched on DeAndre or Jared Goff as far as Todd Gurley and these good running backs. Well, that's what we've seen. When they are good pass catchers, then Goff trusts them, and he's more likely to check down. So I do think that is actually an added benefit that a lot of people might look at. Like, let's be honest, like DeAndre Swift is way better of a pass catcher than Malcolm Brown is. So, and that's what Goff has been dealing with the last few years. So I think low key that could be a really nice stat that no one thinks about. The other thing that I wanted to mention here is with Dan Campbell saying all this stuff and reiterating how much he wants to get DeAndre Swift involved, not only in the running game, but in the passing game, right? If you look at DeAndre Swift, what he did last year, right? I understand different system, but let's just take the carries, for example. He had 6 games last year where he had 15 plus total touches. 15 plus total touches. And 5 out of those games, he had double-digit fantasy points. The only single-digit fantasy game he had was against Tampa Bay, who, by the way, was one of the best run defenses. They were the number 1 run defense in the league, and they didn't even have Matthew Stafford at that point either. So who can really blame DeAndre Swift for that performance? Also, during those games, even though he was having such high carry totals, Travis' lowest yards per carry was 4.5. Detroit secretly has a very good offensive line, and so for me, I think that he can potentially be one of those RBs you're going to get in the later rounds. 3rd, 4th, I think is where he'll end up being come draft time, and I think that he'll be able to get you that fringe RB1 outcome, even though he's not going to be on what looks to be not the most fun team.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But we want to know what you think, Whisper Nation. Make sure you hit us up on all social media platforms and let us know. Are you excited about DeAndre Swift? Who's another guy that you're interested in with new, coaching changes or anything else going on that you'd like us to outlook? And we will do our best there. So make sure you're subscribed over to the YouTube channel today.
Hey, you made it to the end of the video. If you like what you saw, go ahead and click subscribe. And if you want to watch more fantasy football content, check out one of these videos.